We
Norman?
don't know that.
Picking the principal?
Okay.
We're just waiting for the transition.
Right. Okay, so the question, and you can just talk about whatever comes to mind, and you can talk specific or you can talk just kind of in theory. And the first question is, do you think a principal change impacts schools?
Absolutely.
Yes.
A little bit more than yes would be helpful.
Well, it affects all the employees, the parents, the students, just the whole community's opinion. Everyone just looks to the principal to step up and be that new leader and continue taking that school in the right direction.
People typically tend to expect the principal sets the tone, the vision, everything, and that filters down and out.
Well, and it's hard when you have leadership leading that you're used to, and then you have leadership coming in that has a completely different style. For example, if the staff is used to having input, being listened to, not being micromanaged, and then you have somebody come in who micromanages everything, it can be really difficult for a staff, especially a staff that's fairly independent.
So one of the questions that I keep getting asked from my professors about this is, how can you prove that it's a problem? And I have all kinds of stories to prove why it's a problem. But I struggle with that question because there's not necessarily, test scores don't necessarily go down. There's not a lot of hard data. How can you prove that impacts a school when there's a principal transition? What numbers would you use?
I don't know if you use numbers, but I mean the morale of the school itself. I mean, that's a big indicator of what the environment's like.
Well, you could definitely take a survey. I mean, you would have data from a survey. Also, you could look at, like your transfer rate out in terms of the following year, do a lot of teachers leave? That would be a data point.
It would probably have to.
Students leaving, we've
You
experienced
would have
some
to
of
track
that.
it over several years though, because typically when a new principal comes in, they don't change anything the first year. They kind of try and get a feel for what's going on before they start making those changes, unless they're just really gung-ho and stubborn and this is the way I'm gonna do it. So it would have to be over a long period of time in order for it to be measurable and in order for it to be valid. Because you don't initially see those changes right away, like we were talking about. Those changes on the surface you don't see them right away, but then all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, how did we get to this point?
Well, and you want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt when they've moved into a new facility, be whatever their circumstances, working with another new person or the first time they've had that position, illnesses, health, whatever could be involved in that person's life, because we don't always have time to do that, to look at the other extenuating circumstances. But then at some point, if you're of one of those people that would do that for that person and kind of be the buffer for other people, at some point with the next year, you run out of things to say and excuses of why everybody is feeling a difference in the building. And a difference isn't measurable, but more people that get together and talk, side conversations that are occurring and concerns that are coming up that are not always academic involved. I mean, they're not score based, test based. I don't know. Other Ducky said it was in a survey. An atmosphere begins to deteriorate. When I moved from a facility that was already in a desperate situation to this building, it was immediate upon my first week here, the work week, and then definitely when the children came, that I was in a completely different environment than where I had been before. And it was quickly realized that it was based on the top-down filtration of expectations. and involvement.
One of the things I'm trying to construct is a transition plan. So while this person's leaving and this person's starting, things that this one does and this one does and they do together and the people over them do. What do you think the outgoing person or the incoming person, what are some things that they should do that should be on their to-do list to make that smooth? Or is it just inevitable? Transition's hard. Or are there things that we could put in place that would ease that transition?
I think if you would trust the staff in coming and outgoing to make a T-chart, if you will. You know, this is what's working, this is what's not working. And if the incoming person would trust that, they should just stick with what's working and then find a way to pick up what's not working instead of trying to completely overhaul everything, learn new school, learn new staff. You know, but that puts trust in people you don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who've been here and you know what's working, you know, so
Well, and that's not necessarily easy for anybody to do because we all come with baggage. And unless that T-chart is completely anonymous, so that the person coming in doesn't know what was said and the person going out doesn't know who said it, it's building that trust too, because you don't know this person coming in, you don't know if there are going to be repercussions for what you said either. And I mean, let's face it, it's human nature. Somebody gets mad at you, the first thing they want to do is retaliate.
What about overlap? So one of the things that some school districts have is a set amount of time where the school has two principals. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's a week. But the set time where these people actually overlap and they have guiding things that they do together. Maybe stand in front of the staff together. Maybe go through this report together. Maybe meet the community together. Do you think there's value in those two people interacting? Or should it be this clean, this is done, here I start? Or should it be kind of gray where they overlap?
I think it just depends on the situation. It could be a very positive thing, but sometimes when you have just a clean break, you have closure and you can move on a little bit easier. But no matter what, I think back to your previous question, that new person coming in has to be willing to listen and just realize the makeup of the staff and start building those relationships before they start making changes.
like you kept saying yesterday, you have to know your people. No matter what level you're talking about, you have to know your people, you know.
I think we experienced 2 years ago the overlap